these medicines are really a gift from Earth to us to help us. It shouldn't be controlled by a very few amount of people to make a bunch of money. That's the last thing that should be happening here. And again, this conversation about, indigenous people and them being the gatekeepers, rightfully so, to these things, and being left out of the conversation, this is not right, And I think outside of it not being right, it's just also less effective, because if you sat in ceremony with someone from the Amazon, versus some guy that like just got into this stuff 2 years ago and is like gonna play some Enya while you're, like you're on a bed.
Stay tuned, stay curious. Enculturation podcast. Thank you so much for coming on the show. Really appreciate you being here and taking the time. I felt like it's been a long time coming, meeting the person behind the name, because I've heard about you for I think over like 15 years now, since like day one, before I was ever even a dancer really. I think Odie was talking about you. And
yeah, I need to put Odie on the payroll, man. I mean that guy is like the best PR there is.
Yeah. So I think you've done a lot of really interesting stuff, from the flavor group to your work with plant medicine and Decriminalize Nature, and also all the other stuff, like even hosting the talk with Andrew Yang and Chamath, right? So let's start from the top, from how I first know you, and then we'll kind of work our way to where you are now.
Sure.
Yeah. So like tell me about. Oh yeah, I think I read somewhere that you originally were studying neuroscience.
Yeah.
And then you kind of just dropped off and jumped over to the flavor group, right?
I don't know if it was that much of a decision like that I made intentionally. It was more that 1998, graduated from college, had a degree in neuroscience. I will give myself a plug. I actually graduated in 3.5 years. I'm that smart. Took some AP classes. My last semester in college was just like learning how to skateboard, basically. So I had a buddy, and he was going to be in Arizona, and he said, come pick me up, and I have some friends in Santa Cruz, and we can kind of hang out there. So I convinced a good friend of mine that I've known since 6th grade. We'd both degrees in science. And I was like, look, dude, my homie's going to be in Arizona. We can stay in California. Let's go. And so this is like pre-cell phone, man. Like there was no, there's this thing called AAA, and you would go to it, and they would basically print out a little guidebook for you that was all the roads that you had to travel. There was no GPS, no nothing, right? So you would have this huge book, and you would follow the book, and that's how you would figure out how to drive anywhere. So we had this whole like map, and we picked up my friend in Arizona, and then we got to California, and then we got here in the summer of 1998, and we're like, what is there for us to do in Baltimore? Not much. So we got really lucky, and we never went home. So the whole...
So you got there, and you're like, okay, now what?
Exactly. So we just got pretty lucky. We both had degrees in science. Biotech was kind of exploding at that time. So we both got jobs in the field, and I got like an insanely prestigious job. I was working under the head of like Molecular Bio at Stanford for a huge biotech company called Genentech. And I went to school in Maine. Which is a very small liberal arts college, 1,500 people, 1,200 people up, in Maine. Like there was 2 bars in the entire town, right? Went to a all boys high school and prep school in Baltimore. So when I came out to California, I was like, holy shit, like this is amazing. And San Francisco in the late 90s was a super special place, right? Really, the .com boom hadn't really happened. So you had this kind of combination of like, really smart people, all of this sort of innovation, but it was still really cheap to live. So the art scene and the whole community in San Francisco at that time was just amazing, because you could afford to live, and you didn't have to be in tech to afford rent, right? Tons of creative people, crazy events happening all the time, whether that be circus or raves or just art, people were just creating, And And so for me, coming from these, very small kind of schools, I was out 7 days a week. Literally, I'm not kidding, 7 days a week until 3 o'clock in the morning. And then I would roll into this, very strict biotech job. And I didn't drink coffee at this time either, right? So I would roll in to work just like exhausted. And like no one would know where I was because like I would literally go into the bathroom and close the door and just like sleep or go to a picnic bench and just sleep. And so, dude, you got it. This is not, biotech, especially that, like I was supposed to be in a lab doing assays and working with PCR machines and doing all this stuff. People are like, dude, where is this kid?
See, you're awesome.
Yeah. So basically what ended up happening is in 3 months, they fired me. Right. I remember when like HR pulled me in and they were like, hey, this isn't working out. And I was like so crushed. I was like, what's going on? I thought I would, I look back on it and, it totally makes sense why they fired me. But, it's just really, it's super funny to think back upon because what a formative time, And I think what that led to a lot in terms of what happened next in my career and just like the things that excited me in general, right? It just
so during the stage when you were in California or San Francisco and you were getting introduced to these events, like what about the experience made it worthwhile for you to have that risk? Like, do I come to work or do I go out 7 days a week?
I mean, one, so I'd started going to raves at the end of the senior year in college. And again, we went to school in a very small town in Maine, but a homie of mine, this guy named Chris Niemeyer, he was like, dude, you got to come check out this scene. And back then, like I was into classic rock and hip hop and stuff like that. I'd been to Dead shows and Fish shows and stuff like that. And he's the one that took me to my first raves. And we went to these unbelievable, I remember he took me to an event in Montreal in the like spring of 1998. And there was like a massive arena that was all hard house, like Terry Mullen, like old school, like hard house stuff. And then there was a whole room that was all hip hop. And it was like Funk Dubious and Qbert even performed. And there was like the dopest b-boys and dancers and circles, right? And so as a kid growing up in the 80s, like obviously you'd seen breaking and I had all the like whack posters and fucking VHS, like how to break dance stupidity, but like you see that stuff in real life in an arena like that. And I was like, this is it. I am sold. Like this is the coolest stuff ever. And so that it just, I come from a family that's been producing events for a very long time. So my dad has been producing like a Hindu religious festival for 47 years.
Wow.
Yeah, so there's a Ganpati Ganesh, which is like the elephant-headed god that you'll see like, caricaturized in all kinds of popular media. He is basically like the protector, and he is the deity for people in Mumbai, in Bombay, right, in Maharashtra. And so every kind of fall in September, there's a huge, like they make these huge effigies and like they're like, 5 stories high. There's like a huge parade and people put them into the water. And so it's a huge thing, Ganpati Puja. And so he's been a community kind of event creator forever since I've been growing up, right? So when I was a kid, he would rent out like school gyms and invite the entire Indian community to come to these pujas that he would do. So from a very young age, like I've been always connected to events and music and like that kind of organization, right? So it's always just been something I've seen. And so, seeing like these large scale, like massive, like productions and events, it's just something, and then the music and the community, because this was before like late 90s, going to raves and like going to underground, it was underground. It wasn't commercial. Like it wasn't a thing that everybody did because everybody was like figured out they could get high on Molly and like be in underwear in essence, which is an oversimplification of what I see the scene is for right now for young people. But like, I think that's a big component. Back then, like when I was, first experiencing it, it was just an opportunity for people to really, it was counterculture. You know, it was for people that didn't really fit into other things. And I always sort of occupied that, right? Like as a first generation immigrant born in Baltimore, like growing up in, you know, a white collar town in the 1980s, like I'd never really fit in, dude, you know? Then add to that going to like, you know, prestigious schools and stuff like that. Like I was always an outsider trying to fit into something. So when I saw this like whole culture of dance music and inclusion and, you know, that community and the energy that it had combined with like this like high level of dancing and these DJs and this production, like I was like, yo, this is it. Like I am like, whatever this is, how do I get down? And so I got really fortunate. One of the first events I went to, we kind of like, we dropped into San Francisco. And so this is back then, again, this is pre-social media, right? So you would find out about events through flyers. There was no freaking websites or anything. Like an old buddy of mine had a phone line that you would call, and every Friday he would update it with all the events that were happening. You know,
Yeah, I definitely remember those days.
so you know what I'm saying. So now people take it for granted because there's so many channels.
There's apps that tell you exactly where it's.
Tell you where to go, what's going on, emails, social media, stories. Like instantaneously, you know something has happened. This is not how it used to be.
Yeah.
You know, so. Haight Street, I remember like Amoeba Records, right? Like all these stores on Haight Street, every single one would have cubicles similar to this, but like with way more slots. And everybody would go and drop flyers, right? And it would just, I mean, hundreds, you know, you would go and there was drum and bass events, there was house events, there was like all kinds of dance music stuff, right? And so we went and got a flyer. And it was for this like daytime event called Sunshine Daydream. That was at an old venue called 550 Barneveld, right? And it was like a daytime rave, you know, for 21 and up. And I was like, what is this? All of this stuff was happening like in San Francisco at that time. It didn't matter like the style of music. There was a scene for it. And the energy and the people were all like amazing. You know, whether it was like eclectic for drum and bass or stompy for house, like it just was this, it was everywhere. Right, in San Francisco. So we found this flyer, went to this event, and like, you know, we were like raging, you know, we met like a couple of the people that were producing the party, and they took us to they were like, hey, let's go to this after party, which was this super iconic spot in San Francisco called the Castle. So it's literally in Hunters Point, and it's this old house that looks like a castle. They built it to look like a castle. But back then it was like the spot for after hours.
So was it actually a venue, or was it like...
It was a house/venue. So
was it like an officially sanctioned venue? It was one of those like, hey, this is my house, but let's throw an event here.
Somebody lived there, but
Yeah.
it was built for parties.
Okay.
Like the people that built it in the 30s or 40s, like that's what it was.
Yeah, they knew what they were doing.
They knew what they were doing, right? So it was just like the continuation of raging like through generations, which is very San Francisco, you know, like people have been partying there for a long time. And so at this event, like, you know, it was like, you know, maybe 5 o'clock in the morning, and we were like, obviously like messed up. And we were like, dude, we should live together. And then we like kind of thought, I was like, I don't even know this guy. I just met this guy Ramiro today at his day rave. And we're gonna like move in together. It's like, what the hell, man? But that's exactly what happened.
Oh, yeah, she was.
Yeah, we totally kicked it. And me and my buddy, who I convinced to drive out from Baltimore, the three of us found a spot in San Francisco. And the point of the story is like he was producing events, so this was like my ticket into figuring out how all this worked, because I had no idea. Right. So in the beginning, I was flyering for them. You know, I would go out, I was part of the crew. You know, we would roll to the club with like 10,000 flyers. Okay. I'm literally not kidding. And we would, you know, dropping on tables, handing them out. It was like the first.
Yeah. You know,
pure,
I actually remember being at Rays in the early 2000s. And especially upon leaving, there's always a team of people handing out flyers either for after parties or to the next event. Like they're all just there like 4 a.m. ready, you know?
Exactly. You know, it was exactly that. And it wasn't just like waiting for people to walk past you. It was more like intentional. It was like finding people that you were vibing with, or other dancers, or, you know, all these other things, and being like, yo, you're tight, you should come to my party, and selling your product, which was the event. Right. And so through that, I started, handing out flyers, and then understanding how the whole system worked, which is like you go to a venue, you find a date, you try to negotiate, no bar guarantee. They keep the bar, you keep the door.
So was this whole time during or after you were out of that particular job?
So this kind of, there was only 3 months where I was at that job, right? So that period was very small. So I had started flyering and just kind of understanding all this stuff in that time period. And that was another reason why I got fired. Cause not only was I going out, I was promoting, I was just like fully jumping headfirst into this culture, but I learned the ropes that way, how you do a contract with a DJ, how you reach out to their manager, whoever those people are. And these were all house events. So you
were pretty much like learning from like the ground up, especially from someone that was already doing.
Yeah. They already had a crew. They were all my homies. And then I had some money because I had a job. And so I would like invest in the events, and I just learned the ropes of how these events went down, from people who knew how to do it. And that was like the beginning of producing events and starting events and just being really wrapped up in the culture.
So were you producing events before Flavor Group was formed, or what was the timeline like for that?
Yeah. So the crew was called Uniting Souls, and then we were producing events all together. And we would have like Doc Martin, Roy Davies Jr., like real classic house stuff. And it was an amazing collective crew of people. We would do events in LA. We'd have Miguel Miggs in both cities. We were trying to like put stuff together early. Can we book one DJ, but then do a show in SF and LA together and kind of like route a mini tour for them. And so then Ramir ended up moving to Seattle. And so I got to a point too where I was like, you know what, like, why don't I start doing my own things? Because I had a slightly different angle than just house music. Because I came to San Francisco and I've been doing dance for a very long time. As a kid, learning like, Indian dances and like community stuff. And it was always something I really enjoyed, And then when I got to SF, man, like you would just see this like just everything, you would see poppers, you would see house dancers, you would see b-boys. And I just started making friends with all of these people. And so the dance, like being really connected to dancers was something that I just kind of gravitated towards, And so those were some of the first events that I started producing. And so I just created an event called Flavor. My buddy, who I met right when I moved out, he was like the GM for this bar that's right by the ballpark. It's right by the Giant Stadium. Awesome venue. Had like an outdoor area, like an inside of area. Had 500-600 people, nothing huge. And then I just started producing events, under the name Flavor. And there was always like a dancer component to it. And one of the first All Styles battles, this was like 2001, 2002, that happened at that same venue, right? It was just like, hey, let's do this contest. Let's bring everybody together. Because that's what was happening at my events. Poppers would come because I just knew these dudes from circles.
So was it All Styles just because it was natural progression of like the people that you already knew or the people that was coming? Was that the origin of the idea of All Styles versus like, hey, let's just do a house battle or something?
At that time, dude, like house dance wasn't, it wasn't as developed as it was in the like kind of like contemporary lexicon where, because a lot of those New York dancers, like Brian Footwear Green, like we started bringing those guys out, and now that kind of style and like, again, like now there's like the internet and you can watch all this stuff. But back in that time, like YouTube didn't exist, right? So it wasn't like people could watch something and go, oh, this is like a Chicago, this is how you jack. Like there was no perspective. So there was definitely people in San Jose that the kind of like, and the housing authority had already kind of happened. So there was like a somewhat of a foundation, but there was a gap. And people were not doing like the quote unquote house dance style that you see now in clubs. That wasn't what it was. It was different, So then there was another guy, this guy named Ten of Quad. I'm sure you know Ten, or Pat. I'm sure Odie has talked to you about Ten.
Yeah, I met Ten too.
Yeah, Ten was doing some interesting things because he was coming at it from a performance angle. And so he was doing these shows. I think it was called Motion. That's what it was called. And he kind of brought all these different dances together to do like a stage show. And I was like way more in the like club kind of production world. And I had already done a battle. And yeah, the idea was just conceptual. Like back then to me, events was that was my art, dude, right? Like this was a very personal, completely creative art form, right? Like it was, what's the flyer going to look like? What's the talent? In my mind, I was building a space, an experience. The experience was the art, and what, like how the altar looked inside, the lighting, like the way everything came together. It was not about money, because I made no money. It was literally just, how can I put this thing together that I really was passionate about and what was really exciting to me, and that's how it all kind of came together. So the dance battle was just purely conceptual. It was like, I know these dope capoeiristas, I know these dope, like, what if we just kind of mixed it all together and came up with some different idea? Because I would go to like b-boy jams and just, there were no house jams back then, right? But there was definitely a ton of b-boy jams. And I would go, it's awesome, but it's very specific, and some b-boys can dance, but some didn't. And so the whole idea was all about dance. Was how are you reflecting the music? What about your movement is reflecting the music? And so that was a component back then as well. Like there was like, we would do, one of the biggest ideas that I had for even the first one was, there's going to be some music that you've probably heard, but the last track is going to be some weird shit. It's going to be like, the music from the bar scene in Star Wars. Like, can you get down to that? Because that was the whole point, right? Like, sure, like if it's like, some breaks, like you're going to hit the beat or whatever, and it's like some funk, like obviously like a popper is going to be able to hit that. But like, can you put somebody in an uncomfortable situation and then can they dance?
Basically, like how are they operating in their or outside of their element, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Like, are they a dancer or not? Or are they a robot? Can they listen to music and can they evoke the music in their movement? That was always the whole point of these battles. And that's why it was all styles. It wasn't because like all styles were the thing. It was just, there were so many talented dancers,
So I have to ask, or rather I'm curious, how did you navigate the conversation with your parents during this whole time when you were like, hey, I got this really cool neuroscience job, I got fired and I'm going to do this, like, because I imagine if that was me, that would be a tough conversation.
Oh, it was an extremely tough conversation, but the reality was I never asked them for money, right? So that was a huge part of it. Yeah, they were like, what are you doing with your life? Because my mom was like, you're gonna go get a PhD, and even I thought that out of college. Like I was a super science guy. I was like, I'm gonna get a PhD and like work in a lab and do some research or whatever, And so yeah, their whole concept of what I was becoming. They were like, yo, what are you doing, dude? But at the same time, they live in Baltimore, and I live in California.
Yeah.
And I wasn't like, hey, can you give me like $1,000 or $2,000 or $5,000? Like, I wasn't what can they really do? Yeah, they could just be like, you're wasting your life, but they didn't, I wasn't beholden to them financially. I ended up racking up tens of thousands of dollars of credit card debt. But like, I didn't care, I didn't care at all because I was doing what I wanted to do, and I was like the most broke I have ever been, like the most like, kind of stressed about money ever. But at the same time, like the happiest, because I was literally doing exactly what I wanted to do. It was whatever I wanted to do. That's what I would do.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So it was a good time. And I feel very fortunate because most promoters make no money. And I was one of them. I had this very high concept art thing. All your friends want to come in for free, whatever cash you make at the door. So you use a credit card to pay for flyers, pay for airfare. You couldn't pay talent that way, but pay for all of this stuff, use a credit card for that. Then whatever cash came in, you paid your rent. You know, and so you just racked up debt. And so most promoters, like, I think people come in and out. Everyone thinks they're gonna, like, you know, make a ton of money on an event.
I feel
It's
like right, this right here is a meme. Is like what promoters, what people think they do, what they actually do.
100%, 100%. Promoters lose money. That's what they do. People come in hot and heavy thinking they're gonna, like, make 50 G's. They end up losing 100. Like, it's stupid, you know. But again, it's like, why do you do it? And I just did it because I liked it. You know, it was my whole thing. And so the dance component was just really exciting. The dance was not. This was like late 90s, early 2000s, right? So this was before the second or third coming of dance. There was no dance TV shows. Like, breaking was still kind of like frowned upon, and like for most things, like I would watch freestyle session DVDs and stuff like that. I'd be like, yo, this is the tightest stuff, you know? But it was not a cool thing. Like, people were not, you know, now there's apps and like TikTok and like all of this like popular cultural stuff.
What would you say during this stage where you were doing it purely for the love and being like financially put back, right? And then, like, obviously, you made it past that stage to where you are now. So there's some kind of breakthrough. Like, how did that breakthrough happen? Because the only thing that I really know, without knowing the details, is like somehow you got in contact with Red Bull, right?
Yeah. So again, it's, you know, I think in life you can just be very like premeditated. You know, like you can have an idea and like try to come up with a business plan and attack a market and come up with like some angle, you know, and are like, yo, I'm going to go do this because there's an opportunity. And sometimes that's how it works, you know, for people. I think when it comes to creative stuff, sometimes it's just the right time, and you're fundamentally in the right time at the right place. And that's kind of what happened with me in terms of my career and dance specifically, because again, dance was not a cool thing. It's just something that we did. Right. What ended up happening was, I was at a festival in Acapulco that my roommate, same guy Ramiro, got hired to do all the talent buying for. And at that, I met this guy that was starting to work with this energy drink called like Red Bull. And it was like energy. That wasn't even a concept. Okay. Like, no one even understood what that was. And he was doing some really, really interesting stuff culturally. Where one of the first projects that he got me to do, I danced in a video that he produced that basically he was giving to VJs. And it had like cool like VFX and like the Red Bull logo. And he basically would give it to VJs to play at these raves and these big shows as like a subtle branding tool for Red Bull as a brand, right? And back then, you know, even sports marketing, like there was stuff there, but there was no culture marketing, you know, meaning like endorsement deals, like, you know, like Tom Cruise would go get paid by a watch company to be in a commercial, very typical type stuff. But people weren't hiring musicians for brand deals. People weren't definitely not hiring DJs, like, because again, that thing wasn't really even a thing, right? And so I remember he was like, his whole job, one of the smartest things that Red Bull did, because again, this was pre-social media, right? They realized that young people were not watching television. They were not watching, you couldn't just, because conventional advertising was all about, you know, come up with a TV spot, spend a lot of money on 3 networks, and if your product doesn't suck, something will probably happen. But that changed completely, right? And so Red Bull was really hip to that, and so their whole strategy was event-based, right? And again, I just happened to fit into a time where, you know, events were really necessary to market to a younger demographic. But even how they did it was really smart. So we'd had a couple like liquor sponsors. They always wanted their logo on a flyer, and they wanted like a banner in the venue. And so I asked Kurt Sonderegger, legendary dude, you know, back from the Red Bull days. I was like, yo, do you want that? He's like, no, this is what we want. We want to make sure there's a Red Bull cooler in the VIP, and all your dancers are drinking Red Bull, and like they're doing it. We don't want a logo. We don't want anything like that. Make sure opinion leaders and influential people in your community are holding and drinking the product. And that's how they built their like the entire
subtle,
brand. Super subtle, but they would go, and his job was, let me go find these really cool communities with very cool people, you know, and let me support them. And let's just have Red Bull be a supportive component in how and what they're doing, right? And again, at that point, no one was doing anything like that, right?
So were you like the first concept of that kind for Red Bull?
No, they were doing it for other events, and he would do stuff at like the Winter Music Conference. What I was like one of the first for was how they kind of tied into urban dance and just dance culture and street dance culture. They had a really popular program called the Red Bull Music Academy, where it was very, again, super Red Bull kind of concept, where people would apply from all over the world. And it was this crazy kind of application process, and you would have to include music. And they picked the top 20 people, and they would like fly them to South Africa. And in South Africa, they would like renovate a church or something and put in music studios and bring out the most amazing musicians and DJs and producers and have these really intimate talks, teach these 20 people about music and production and all of these kind of cultural things. And they would do this. And that was the Red Bull Music Academy. And it was a massive, massive program for them. And it was super successful because it was a way to kind of activate their brand in a organic, for lack of a better word, but in a way that wasn't commercial, right? It wasn't like, hey, we're going to hire Tiesto and it's going to be Tiesto Music Week or whatever and whatever, you know? So what I ended up doing was doing basically that same concept, but for dance. And so I came up with this idea called the Red Bull Beat Riders, because what do dancers do? Different kinds of, they ride the beat, right? So it was the same exact concept. And this was like pre-YouTube, right? Pre-social media, pre-anything. So a lot of the rationale for doing these events was they would get more PR and what's called earned media from the events than doing a conventional media buy.
So what exactly is earned media?
Earned media is when like a publication, right, writes about your event, writes about what you're doing, right? When you get press to write about what it is you're doing, that's earned media, right? So they had this crazy thing called Flugtag where people like make a flying thing and they fly off of a pier and it's like they just fall like, 15 feet into the water or whatever. It's like super silly. But that would come on like Sports Center top 10 sports moments of the week. So through events, and this is still what they do, and they do a lot of it, and they do it for different like mountain biking and extreme skiing and parachuting.
I also see videos of Red Bull and those jumping flying suits. I don't know. There's probably a name for that.
There totally is. Anyway, that was their whole angle. And so they were doing with all these other cool things. They're like, okay, how can we do it with dance? Because they were sensing that dance was like having a resurgence, kind of culturally. And so that to answer your question, that was an inflection point for me in my career, where I went from this guy that was just losing money on being a promoter. In 2003, I had this there was like some good friends of mine, and we'd do this huge New Year's party. And like we had like Z-Trip there, and it was like open bar. We had Craze and Miguel Miggs, and we did it at this venue, and this dude was like a shady guy, okay? And so 2003 New Year's, we were like, dude, we're gonna kill it. Like we're gonna each make 50 G's, like it's gonna be amazing. This is it, right? Like the guy was so shady, like he wasn't supposed to have two entrances to his venue. This was right on 11th and Folsom. I don't even know. It's now Halcyon is one of the venues, and some other super commercial one is like another venue, right? It's literally at 11th and Folsom in San Francisco. So we had two entrances. The fire department came at 11:35 or 11:40, shut down the entire thing. Okay. So we just like, we're sitting there, and I remember, dude, you know, it's basically like 2 minutes before New Year's, okay? And the sound guy, who he's like, if you don't pay my guy right now, I'm going to turn off your sound. So I'm upstairs, you know, everyone's like partying, having the time of their lives. They're about to say like Happy New Year's. And it gets to the countdown, and I'm like, dude, you just got to trust me. I'm going to pay you, but you can't turn this party off right now. There's going to be like 2,000 people that will kill everybody. You know? And so at that moment, when I was like the most unhappy possible, just had like on paper, I think we ended up, you know, 10, 20 grand, you know, loss on that event. That was like my breaking point. I'm like, dude, this promoter thing, bro, can't continue to
That's
do
so
this.
stressful. Like,
oh, dude, the
that
worst.
must have been like the longest 2 minutes ever.
It was. I still remember it to this day. You know, everyone was like, Happy New Year's. And I was sitting here like, I think I just lost 20 grand. But anyway, at that was like a thing. And I was like, I'm not going to be a promoter. If someone wants to hire me for events, blah, 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 whatever. But again, like right around that time, they kind of came to me, Red Bull did, and they were like, hey, can you produce an event for us as marketing? We're gonna pay you. I was like, you're gonna pay me to like book the best dancers in the world? And like, I look at that budget, by the way, and I'm like, how? And they were really smart. This is, you know, they just got young, hungry people like myself and paid them nothing. You know, it was more than they were used to getting paid, but it was still like absolutely nothing. And that was like the beginning of the Red Bull Beat Riders. So we put together this like super squad of like advisors that included Ken Swift, Cross One, Asia One, Zulu Gremlin, Brian Footwood Green. So I had like this, like, because I'd already been doing these events, I had met these people, you know, and the whole idea was like, can we get this group of advisors and then produce a camp? It was a summer camp. The first one was in Woodward, which is like an extreme sports gymnastics kind of thing outside of LA. And we built like a dance floor. We built a DJ booth. We like had this really cool seating where people could like, you know, we had the legends, bro. We had Don Campbellock explain to everybody how somebody convinced him not to call it Campbell locking and call it locking. So, you know, literally he made that dance. That was the whole purpose of the event, right? And dude, the dancers that went through that are still to this day some of the most amazing, you know, from Bionic Man to Cole Walliser, who's this huge like Emmy guy, does this video stuff, Machine, Rocks Right, Focus, you know, the list, you know, Farside, the list goes on and on. Like all of these people that went through this program are doing dance full time. And that was the concept behind it, right? Like how can we deliver to this next generation of dancers, not only an understanding of the dance and of these different dances, but the business, the culture, you know, how to actually make it because like a lot of dancers, and this is something that I always found, right? Like you'll see these B-boys are like these guys that can battle and will be in your face, like tearing you apart. But as soon as someone's like, yo, I'm not going to pay you, or yeah, you're going to take half your pay, they crumble, right? Because they don't have that experience. They have the experience of battling in a cipher, but not battling in the real world. And that was a huge component of the whole event. You know, how can we give this next generation of dancers perspective on how to actually be entrepreneurs, business people, you know,
that's a really
survive.
Good point. Yeah, that's a really good point. I think you hit the nail on the head. So many dancers, myself included, like did not make the translation from what you do or what you love to how to make it sustainable, make it a business.
Yeah. And it's hard, man. Anything creative, you know, if it was easy, more people would be doing it. I think there's more opportunities in the sort of modern landscape, you know, where you can have people subscribe and you have things like Patreon and, you know, you have non-commercial things that you can do in terms of creating an audience, you know, and being an influencer is a thing, you know, like, so I think if you're kind of dedicated to a craft, there's more opportunities. But back then, like, again, social media didn't exist, dude. So we did this whole program and people had to send in videos, and it was all conceptual. We were like, we're going to make this, Red Bull has a team across the world. They're going to get people, to apply, hopefully. And the application was, you have to make a video and you have to mail it to my office in San Francisco, right? And we had no idea. And then all of a sudden, bro, like I would just get these packages and they'd be like stenciled, decorated. People were sending mini DVs, VHS, like all this stuff. And some of those videos, bro, I have a bunch. Like they were just amazing. People were like, dude, I want to do this. Like, here's who I am. And that the whole point wasn't like, let's accept the person that can do the longest head spins. Like that wasn't the whole. Let's accept people that really have a true, genuine goal of understanding the dance and the culture and being advocates and leaders for the next generation. That's who we were trying to find, right? And amazing, So I still remember just getting all these packages and opening them up, and like there was letters and they were decorated, and the video content was amazing, And we would have to have all these different freaking things to watch them, And we would do that, and then we would all meet together as a group, and then pick the people that got in, And so yeah, super special, But that was a huge inflection point for me personally in my career, because I went from creatively producing events to producing events for companies and being an agency that did that. Now, of course, that had some drawbacks, right? Like I was fortunate to do very creative stuff, but it's very different when you have a client, right? Super different, because like you might have a great idea and they might not like it. So what are you going to do? You're gonna run with what they're paying you to do. And again, this is all kind of like pre-social. And then we started doing huge events for Toyota. Scion was a brand that they were launching. And so we took over Alcatraz for Scion, So you talk about, challenging event production. Imagine producing an event on an island, right? You have to, when you produce an event on an island, you barge everything over to the island. We had to barge car, like on one bar. Yeah.
I think Ja Rule should have hired you for Firefest.
Right? He could have. I don't think he could have afforded me, but
they could definitely use you then.
Exactly. I mean, dude, that Alcatraz event was almost Firefest, bro. Like we barely.
Wait, like the actual Alcatraz island over here?
Yeah.
Okay.
The island of Alcatraz. We took over the island of Alcatraz.
How do you even do that? Like what?
Very, 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 and I don't think anyone will ever do this again, to be quite honest. Like we like at that time, my partner, he was also like this event, kind of like SF legendary dude, had a magazine called Free Mind, Louis Honoré. So we were partners, and we were artists. So we approached events as art. And if you want to do an event on Alcatraz, basically what you have to do is you go to it's the Federal Park Service is the people that there's an application process and there's a ton of money. And normally what they do is they put you in like a warehouse, kind of over, you're on the island, but you're in a warehouse over on the side. And they make you do a tour because they're all about making sure everyone that comes to the island like understands the history, not only of the prison, but of Native people, the bird sanctuary. It's a federal park. Right, it's a bird sanctuary.
Oh, that I didn't know.
They're it's a migratory location for all of these birds, and they're very careful about everything, like sound and all this stuff. Right, so typically you pay a ton of money, and like you can like do a little thing in a warehouse, and we were like, dude, that's not going to work for us. So we were just really good at convincing the federal rangers, like, hey, let's approach this as art. And let's incorporate the rangers and the tour as part of the event, okay? And so we did like this eco fashion show in the shower room of Alcatraz because it's a natural runway. And right before there was the fashion show, a ranger would come out and say like, this was a shower room, da-da-da. So we incorporated these park rangers into the actual experience, right? And we convinced them of this because we were insane, And we had live music in the dining hall. We turned the hospital wing into this like crazy circus performance. We had this crew called Vaudeville, homies of mine. have like this insane like circus macabre, like dark adult weird shit. And one of the coolest things is we converted the chapel, which typically wasn't open to the public. We turned it into an art gallery. And we had like a bunch of like top kind of like contemporary like writers and stuff. Everybody from like Chor Boogie, Sam Flores, Peanut. They all kind of like had art, and we also had this huge collaborative art wall where these guys just did like 8 panels of art.
So did you mention earlier that this Alcatraz event was for a particular company? I might have missed that.
Yeah, this was for Toyota. They had a brand called Scion, which was, again, a youth-focused brand, and everyone was just pulling from the Red Bull playbook. Anyone that was trying to market to young people was like, we can't just do TV commercials because they're not watching. And this was pre-social media, so there was no influencer, there was no social media buy, like it didn't exist. So everyone was focused on events. And so again, right time, right place. Like I had a bunch of event experience. All of these companies were trying to throw really cool, interesting events.
Was there any other islands as candidates, or was just Alcatraz?
No, it was like an idea, and then they kind of approached us because we had produced one before. Because basically what happened is this company wanted to do events, Scion, right? Like in the Bay Area. And their advertising agency, a company called Addicts, not here anymore. But Addict hired a corporate event planner to produce the event, right? And so they did it like somewhere in Oakland, and I was like, yo, what is this? And like the event looked really good, right? Because corporate event planners, they can do that. They can, like, the lighting was tight and like the entrance was cool and they had cool art. No one came because these cats aren't promoters. They had no idea how to market an event. That's not what they did, right? They did like corporate events where, you were part of a conference or whatever. So that's how I just fit into the slot. Like we could do really cool creative stuff, but we also knew how to market. We knew how to make flyers, and we had the poster guy. We had all the hookups to like make sure people knew about the event, So yeah, that was the whole Toyota thing. And that kind of like exploded this whole kind of component of just getting paid to produce events,
So like earlier you mentioned that you got a lot of your event planning sense from your family. Like it's a long lineage, right?
Exactly.
Did you learn all your senses from anywhere else, or was primarily just figuring it out as you go plus the family roots?
Yeah, you kind of asked me this question earlier, and which was like, what did my parents think? And that outside of what my parents thought, there was what I thought, right? And so for me, as like a young creative, even if I was losing money, I had an internal barometer, which was, am I getting better? Are these events getting better? Is the art better? Is the marketing better? Is the creative better? Is the concept better? Is the flow like, is the experience, is it improving? Is my art getting better with time and by execution?
Yeah, because like from how you jump from thinking that you're gonna get a PhD and working in a lab to all this stuff of like your rate of progression is like mind blowing. It's like it's really impressive how good like you got in the process when it was like nothing related to what you thought you were gonna do. Yeah,
I mean, I just think when you're motivated, like that's really what matters, right? I think with most people, if like you're stuck in a job that you really don't want to be in, that's kind of when you sort of die inside, right? Like, and I also, like many entrepreneurs, I just have a very high tolerance for risk. Like the idea of risk, like, and just being in debt, I didn't give 2 fucks about that. Whereas a lot of people, like, they can't do that because like that stresses them out so much they can't do it. So for me, it's just like those things, they didn't compute. Like I wasn't like, I was racking credit card. I didn't care at all because again, the barometer that I was focused on was like, is my stuff getting better? And I always looked at that, and so that's kind of what I went to. So it was, there was, and that's kind of what happens when you, like, even as a dancer, like anybody can relate to that from a creative perspective, right? Yo, are you progressing?
Yeah. So outside of these like singular or separate departments of things you can measure for progression, whether it's like the art piece or the attendance, right? Like, how did you connect or relate or measure like the experience of the attendees?
I mean, it's, we're like the look at their face when this shit was going down, like how much more complicated is the event coming? Like, are the visuals coordinated with the show? It was a production, And in the beginning it was like, dude, we got a DJ and there's like some lights, whatever. But then it's like, yo, no, it's like you're coming to a carnival, bro, And it's like people's experience. Cause I think this is my, the people that I looked up to back then were just these amazing event creators, right? I remember vividly, 1015 has had like a trillion, the guy Ira that owns 1015 is super smart dude. It's owned that place since the 80s. But, he's kind of had to reinvigorate that thing because it kind of becomes a thing and then people hate it. And then he changes it, then it becomes a thing and people hate it. What Dials is doing right now for talent buying is amazing. But, early, like late 90s, there was two big events. There was this thing called Spun Day, which was kind of like, very commercial dance music. And there was this thing called Release, which was these two promoters called Martel and Nabil. Both of which I, know to this day, but these guys were like legends, bro. Like their events, like the people that would attend, the vibe, right? Like, and that was my experience. Like it's like you walked into a room and it's like the air changed in the room, and you've been to events, right? Where it's not just like, hey, there's a DJ and blah, blah, blah. It's literally like you've been transported into an alternate reality. And back then there were so many of these people because that's what you would do. People weren't like, I need to like make digital media. It's like, it wasn't a thing, right? So creative people were like producing events. You had these guys like Mark Herlihy doing Future Primitive. So a lot of this, kind of open format DJ stuff, that was all him, man, with these artists like Z-Trip. And so you had all of these very different, D. Marie was producing this thing called Eclectic, which was all drum and bass, and everyone was bringing the best artists in the world and they were producing these experiences that were just like next level, right?
So how did that Treasure Island, or not Treasure Island, the Alcatraz event end up panning out? And then you mentioned that no one's probably going to do it there again. And why is that?
I just don't think anyone can convince the park rangers to actually do it in the prison. That's what I mean. Okay. People can probably do an event on people have done an event on Alcatraz, but to actually go to them and convince them, yo, I'm gonna have a bunch of people and like booze in the dining hall of Alcatraz. I'm going to like have circus performers in the hospital wing, not outside, in the prison. Like, you know what I mean? So that's what I think.
Is this event on like Google or on the
Yeah, I can send you a video that's like a recap of it.
Okay.
It's insane. Okay. Yeah, I mean, dude, because like, so again, we had to barge everything over, including the generator that powered our event because we couldn't use the power on the island. So I remember like 30 minutes before people were supposed to come, like the generator wasn't fucking working, bro.
I sense a theme going on. Power's about to go out again.
Dude, it's just, this shit's crazy. This is the kind of, there's a dance with this stuff, right? Like you can put as much, especially when they're very extreme like this, right? You can put like the right people in the right place. And that's kind of what you have to do, man, and you have to just have really great people that really know what they're doing. And you have to have the intention when it comes to an event of being like, we're taking this on as a team. Like, we're going to think through all, like, dude, the night before, the event, basically there was this huge scheduling issue because each room could only fit like the fashion show as an example, it could only fit like 50 people, right? So we had to figure out like everybody got a letter and that letter corresponded to a time because it would have been a mess. Everyone would have just like all 800 people would be just trying to go see the fashion show at different times. So we had to come up with this schedule, like A can now see the fashion show at this time. And then like 30 minutes later, they can go see, the circus performance. You know, it just, we were very much dialed into these sort of details because we had to be, you know, we cared that was our thing, you know.
So with working on such complex events, right, and then needing a high caliber of personnel, you must have a really good sense for how to gauge somebody. So like, what is that?
I think the thing, yeah, I mean, especially with events, man, it's like people have to be built differently, you know, like, cause you have to be able to, in the midst of literally the power not working, not freak out and get it done, you know, and so in general, yeah, like those kinds of people that are used to very high stress type environments, but can be calm, you know, yeah.
Like, how can you tell if somebody has that quality before they're put into that situation?
It's experience. You don't throw somebody into that unless they have that already listed, you know, like you can see via their resume or whatever, like they've done X, Y, and Z and they're sort of built for it.
Okay.
You know, and that's a cool thing about the Bay Area, right? Because like, again, especially at that time, like there was and that's sort of what spurned Burning Man, right? Like this sort of like insane creative mixed with people that can get crazy shit done. That's what was everywhere before everyone had to leave, you know, because it's like impossible to live here if you don't have a big job that pays you big money. But yeah, like it wasn't hard. There's a lot of people like that. There still are here and there, but you know, it was that time. Like that's what the city had, that energy, you know, it really did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's very interesting. So has the goal or direction of Flavor Group changed over the years?
It has, and it had to, from a survival perspective, because when the market crashed in 2008, not only was the like first thing that every company cut was like the marketing budget, but before that was the event marketing budget, right? Like people were like, dude, we literally like the market is crashing. It is an entirely different world. We're not paying $250,000, $500,000, $1 million for an event. Not happening, you know? So we had to just be nimble. And I think anything that's like consumer focused or people focused, that's a component of what you have to do.
So how did you survive, I guess, during 2008 and even during these times when there's like so much inflation?
Yeah. So, I mean, we were pretty fortunate. We started working with a startup called going.com. And this was in 2007, right around the time of Alcatraz. And they had a really interesting bit. They were kind of like if MySpace, if everybody remember, they were like a social network with an event component. They raised a bunch of money from venture, and it was like a thing to do. Again, because like Facebook was still at Harvard at this time, right? So that they were like in between Facebook and MySpace, and people were like, social media, like there's a lot of money to be had here. And so it was this combination of events, because we paid promoters to like list their events on our site, but with social media and digital. And so that was a huge amount of learning for us and me specifically in how that whole game worked, how startups worked, you know, how product development worked, what it meant to be part of a really lean team and push new product features based upon customers, right? Whether those be like the promoters that would list their events or real people that needed extra features. It was a digital product. And that opened up a door for us to, you know, get more into product development and social media. And so the services at Flavor Group, that lasted until going.com was purchased by AOL in about 2010. And then we started producing, you know, more really huge integrated campaigns that was a combination of social, digital, and events. And the first big one was we worked with SanDisk to do a global tour with Tiesto. And it was a combination of digital media, social media, like, you know, and events, and him playing all over the world.
Was it one of those things where it's more experience, or how does Tiesto relate to SanDisk?
So back, like, SanDisk had a product which was like the micro SD card. And back then, like, you know, everyone needed more memory in their phones. And so the whole idea was, can we connect the need for this physical medium device, which can hold all of these photos and all this content, as part of an experience, right? Like, why do you do that? Well, you're out, you're going to these concerts, you're taking photos of your friends, da 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 da. Can we work with a really big artist, create a bunch of content, get a bunch of press, and attach a brand and the usage of their product to, a real life, rationale for why people use the product, right? Which is going to shows and being young and doing all this stuff,
Yeah, I at least from the outside, I sense some similarities between how Red Bull did with the drinks and dancers to Sandus and Tiesto and the experience of being at like a music festival or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we just sort of transition and just like what we could offer grew, and we did a bunch of cool stuff, man. Like, before live streaming really blew up, we were doing, the live stream events. We had this concept called Tight Space. This is before Tiny Desk, and so we had Fool's Gold and A-Track. We basically had a bunch of we would do these really awesome events in very small spaces, but live stream it to the world. So we had Fool's Gold was one.
Was this even before Boiler Room?
This was before Boiler Room, yeah. And then we had Above and Beyond, which is like their massive dance music act in this small pub in the UK. And this is for another technology because like everyone's always trying to figure out an angle. And I think one thing that we knew how to do well based upon the event, based upon Red Bull, was how can you work with artists in the right way to connect a brand and an artist together in a way that makes sense for the artist and the brand and come up with some cool creative idea, And that was like the next phase really of Flavor Group as an agency. And that's sort of what we've just continued to add on today.
Yeah, the word that comes to mind when I hear of your approach or your strategies is it's very organic, where it's like it's a kind of a natural progression or a natural linkage rather than like forcing something that someone's down.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, right time, right place. You can be very programmatic about seeing an angle and like wanting to go do something. Sometimes you don't really give a shit about that thing, but you just see an opportunity and you just go do it. That was not what happened. For me, it was just like, I like this stuff. Someone's going to pay me? Great.
So earlier you mentioned Burning Man, right?
Yeah.
So I'm curious about the way that you experience the world through like event coordination and how you relate to things. And also, I think I was on your Instagram recently and I saw your Burning Man pictures, right?
Yeah.
So what was your experience at Burning Man, especially since you do events yourself? Like how did you like?
I think I think anyone that has had any experience with event production, no matter how big or how small, should go to Burning Man. Because it's insane. Like there's nothing like it in the world. There, what they've been able to convince people to do is not only do you buy your tickets, but you have to go you raise a bunch of money, and people raise, whether it's $100,000 or it's like $5,000. There's no event where not only do you buy a ticket, but then you also pay your own money to build the event. It doesn't exist, right? And so we started going to Burning Man in like early 2000s, like 2004, because a good friend of ours was doing this insane, massive camp. They had like built like a fake Stonehenge and had this like sonic runway, which was like a visual representation of light and sound. Well, they represented light. They represented sound moving through space with these giant pyramids, these giant like triangular pyramids. And it was like a half a mile long. And so you could like, if you were like really far away, you could just see light travel. And it was the sound traveling from the sound system, right? And that's one of a trillion crazy ass things that people do out there, because it does, the event does pull together people that just want to do wild ass things, because that's where else can you do it? And also have an audience of people that are really into experience wild ass things, So what we're doing at Burning Man, we put together a camp for the first time last year. It's called Agave Lounge. And we have this 70-foot geodesic dome with carpeting. a massive sound system. We built a bar that has, I think we went through like 20 to 30,000 drinks. Everything is given away out there, right? And it was pretty. It's a bunch of old heads. Like one of my old homies, a guy named Micah Burns, who is one of the owners of Monarch, Great Northern, Pawn Shop, Monarch Gardens. I've been throwing events with this guy since the early 90s. And it was a bunch. And there's another woman named Nikki, a woman named Lisa, a guy named Colin. We all kind of came together to kind of create a space for people, really. And what our space ended up being was shelter, because last year was one of the hottest years ever. Not only was it hot during the day, it was hot at night. And what we had was this, like, if you've ever been, it's like mad dusty, right?
Yeah, I've not been yet. I have lots of friends who have been, and they all swear how unique Burning Man is. And one of my friends actually says in her own words that Burning Man is the most romantic place on earth.
Yeah, I mean it's a lot of things. I've never heard anyone call it romantic, but to each their own.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like the pinnacle of creativity and the ability to execute. And we're really happy with what we have. It's like a daytime thing, but we just provided a lot of utility for people. People would just come into our dome and like sleep. It was shelter. There was insane dust storms last year, insane heat. So to sort of provide a space for people was just fun. And it's like you're literally building a city. We have a massive generator that powers not only like our dome and the sound system, but all of these RVs that are part of the camp that pay dues to make the camp happen. So you have to come up with this like small city, landscape. Like, where's the RVs going to park? Where's the tents going to be? We build showers for people. It's just super fun and very creative. And I think, for me, that's always been a component. And now my life is very different, right? Like, I'm not a promoter. I still do events here and there. But with 3 little children and, it's just a different thing.
Do your children know you go to Burning Man? And then
absolutely.
Have you ever considered bringing them? Or?
They're too old now.
Okay.
So like you can take kids if they're kind of toddlers, I feel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because then they don't really know what's going on. Okay. But my daughter's 13, bro. Like my son's 10 and my other's 8. Like they're going to know some weird shit's going down, and they're going to ask a bunch of questions. But the toddlers, it's like, this is metal sculpture. It's like, it's not they don't have the same sort of like, yo, this is some wild ass shit. So it's a very different thing. So I don't think, I just think they're too old.
Would you go together as a family when they get like in the 20s or something?
Sure. I would love, yeah, absolutely, man. If I can go and hang with them, like having a relationship with your children over the long term is so important, and so we do a lot of things to just stay connected as a family. Like we all snowboard together, we're outside. We try to introduce them to the outdoors as much as possible, whether that be snowboarding or surfing or camping. We also have a family band.
I saw you posted recently. Tell me about that whole experience.
So yeah, it just one of the things that's happened with the pandemic is obviously like what they were learning in school was so limited, right? Or it so it was like, how do we fill up their time with cool stuff? And I think us as parents, me and my partner Penny, Paneeth, we want our kids to be well-rounded, and even like strategically, our whole take. If you learn something when you're young, you just have that. It's just built into your thing. Like I didn't start playing guitar until I was in my 20s, and I taught myself and the whole thing, And so it was like this like big thing to learn, And I even put it down for a while, and it's been sort of a theme. I feel very fortunate to have started training capoeira in my 20s, because then I took a break to have like kids, or but then I came back to it. But again, it's that same concept. It's like when you've learned something and done like a decade or close to it, you build these things that you can come back to. So our foundational kind of concept with our kids is like, if they can play music and they know what it means to communicate non-verbally, which is, I think, is super important for humans, because we get tied up in language, and there's so much that can be expressed without language, right? Especially as a musician, playing with other musicians, So if they can learn music, if they know how to snowboard, if they can surf, if they feel comfortable, outside in nature, if they have all of these things that are like already a part of them, even if they don't do it for 5-10 years, whatever, they'll be able to come back to that and have that relationship, that personal relationship with an art form, with the world, with Mother Nature, And I think, that's always been a driving component of how we want, what we want to give our kids, is that sort of the ability to have this stuff and not even think about it. Like, my son's 8, dude, and he can snowboard and play drums and like do all this stuff. He doesn't even think about it. It's not even a thing that he has to process.
Second nature, huh?
Yeah, So the kids were playing music, and then it was like one Christmas, and then we're like, hey, let's do like a jingle bell. I can't remember. We were like, let's all kind of do a song. And it was just super fun. And so then I kind of kept it going. And then last year was really big. Our friends do a big concert in Bolinas. They have this like awesome property. And I was like, hey kids, it's gonna be our show. We're gonna rehearse, and we're gonna have this thing, and I'm gonna pay you. You're gonna get paid to do it. Okay. And I think, that kind of mentality, whether it's with the kids or just personally, is something that I leverage, right? Which is, there's this attainable thing in the future, not in the long future, midterm, short term. What's a ton of work that has to go into kind of executing? Because then you go and you really focus on achieving something, and then you're able to go and achieve that goal. And it's like this amazing feeling. And you went and you got to another level. And you've probably experienced this with dance, right? Like, whether you're training for a battle or something, sometimes you need a thing to focus your energy into, so that you can get to that next rung.
Yes. So something that keeps you accountable. That's like a real tangible thing versus like, hey, I'm just going to practice every day.
Exactly. Is there like a date, something tangible that you're like, okay, it's getting closer. Oh shit, it's getting closer. Oh shit, it's getting closer. Right. And yeah, we did our first show. So my daughter's now 13. She sings. My 10-year-old plays keys. My 8-year-old is a drummer. So Sabina is a singer. Rajan is a keyboard player. Ishan is a drummer.
You guys have a band name?
The Kumta family band, keeping it simple, very brand focused. My wife does percussion, and that was really an amazing thing for us to kind of achieve together. And then we did our first show. We did our first headlining show end of March. My wife and my daughter have birthdays that are like a couple days apart, and it's basically the beginning of spring. So we always do something. And I was in Brazil in January at this like festival, a medicine festival. And I had this vision about community and the lack of community that exists, right? Especially like post-pandemic, people have been in their shells. People think that they're connected to people via social media. And don't get me wrong, that you kind of are, but not really. Like, humans need other humans, And I feel people are so siloed. We're so overworked. There's so much anxiety and depression. And a big component is that like people just don't hang out with each other, And as a parent, there's very few places I feel where parents and children can kind of coexist and have fun. It doesn't exist, Like, you might go to somebody's house, and then basically I'm like, all the parents are hanging out in one room, like hanging, and all the kids are in another room on a screen, And it's a big issue, Children, the parents just give their kids these screens as, they call it the third parent, right? And the implications are terrible. It's a huge reason why I think it's like, 1 in 3 young girls have thought about suicide,
Yeah, I've heard multiple people comment on that, especially in regards to Instagram and the perfect image that you got to portray or is shown.
Yeah.
It's become more like a portfolio or a gallery rather than actual real life.
Yeah, it's all made up. And I do social media for a living, so I know it's made up, but kids don't know that. They think this person like is really living this lifestyle. And so even adults, dude, think about how you are constantly judging yourself based upon a perception of somebody else. And, oh, they're doing that. Why am I not doing? Even if you have the sensibility to being like, oh, this isn't real, it's still, you're ingesting it all the time. And I think, dude, cell phones are, terrible,
I think the difference between cell phones that's unique to a mobile device versus other things is, let's say you're playing video games, right? On a console, for example. But as soon as you leave the house,
yeah,
that's over, right?
Yeah.
But the cell phone is like with you in the toilet, when you're sleeping, when you wake
everywhere,
up. Yeah.
All the time. People don't realize how much time they spend on that fucking thing, dude.
Yeah.
7, 8, 9 hours a day, constantly. Like, it's a dopamine thing, right?
You know what's really helped me with my cell phone usage?
Yeah,
is actually my cat.
Oh, nice.
You know why? Because like whenever I'm in bed using my cell phone,
yeah,
my cat can't handle it, and she just swats my hands away.
That's awesome.
I'm like, all right, it's time for bed. I just go to sleep.
That's great. I definitely pay a lot of attention. I check every day how much time I'm on my phone, and really try to regulate it that way, because you're right. Like, something has to kind of pull you away from it. And so that was kind of the point of the event, right? We call it the Kumta Family Get Down. We did it at this venue in San Francisco called the Monarch Gardens, which is the old District 6. It's basically like a cool food truck location. It has a little pavilion, a bunch of food trucks, basketball, games for kids, all kinds of fun stuff. And it was parents could hang out. People felt safe about where their kids were at. A lot of really good people. The kids had a ton of fun. No one was on a screen.
I some of my friends have kids, and then one of the things that they talk about is how to stay relevant with your kids as your kid grows up, right? So I definitely do admire how relevant you are in your kid's life versus just being like the outdated parent that doesn't really know what's going on or can't really relate on these newer terms,
Yeah, it's parenting is always going to be challenging. It doesn't matter where you are. I think it's even more. I think social media and digital technology has made it harder because a lot of parents they use these devices and this stuff as a crutch. And, I think with us, it's like, yo, man, being on stage with my entire family, like locked in with an audience screaming in front of us.
What did I feel like?
The best thing ever. Like, as a parent, as a father, as a partner, I've been in bands, and there's like such an energy that happens when you're on stage working together with like artists to create a moment, but when all of those people are your family and you're like looking at your son and he's like locked in, and you're looking at your other son and he's like locked in, and your daughter is like hitting the note, and your wife is like looking at you like, yo, this is amazing, having that kind of relationship with whether anybody was there or not, it's because we get siloed into these ways of being that we think are right that aren't necessarily right. It's just kind of what is happening, And I think especially with modern culture, I mean, just think about what we consider to be normal, or even more importantly, what doesn't bother us, right?
So you're talking about setting the intention and also being conscious about what you're doing versus just like unconsciously moving through life.
Yeah, and just, the current kind of modern paradigm of what is normal, right? Which is very little time, right? A lot of anxiety and stress, a lot of self-judgment, a lot of not being connected to nature, a lot of not being connected to other humans, and how we sort of like, especially in this country, people are getting shot, like kids are getting shot by machine guns. It doesn't even faze us collectively. This shit'll happen and it's like, you're going to post some other thing, or it's like, it's not even, and you don't really, I mean, at least it was very apparent when I was out of the country, because I came back and that shit happened again. And it's this thing of like, I'm going to follow these footsteps and this is just what life is. It's not what life is, And I think especially as parents, My concern is with a teenage daughter and young kids is what tools, because I'm not always going to be around. We're not always going to be around, right? As parents, what tools can I provide my kids that they can go and pick up an instrument? They can go snowboard. They can go into the ocean. They can go experience Mother Nature. They can go experience an art. They have tools that they can go to help them navigate life, right? And that's a big motivating part in all of this, because so much is unknown.
So I have to ask, what tools or what approaches did you equip yourself and your kids with in order to feel confident in these situations and not feel, I don't know, shy, nervous, or anxiety? Like, because I know a lot of people, even adults, would be nervous in that situation, much less with the whole family. So
I think a lot of it, dude, is, again, like when you're young, the older you get, the more baggage you have, right? And so, it's like anything else that I feel. It's like we're not playing Coachella for the first time. That's like our first show, right? Our first show was, we had a bunch of friends come to our house, and it was like a pre-warm up for that show last year. And we had like 7 or 8 people, come in our living room, and we played music for them. So it was starting. It's like with anything else, like, what's the foundation? How do you build upon it? So, the kids, like, they weren't thrust into this like environment that was like super high stakes and super stressful. It was a bunch of, our friends in our living room, and we performed for them first. And then even that first big show that we did, those were all our friends as well, and so it's just a matter of creating these building blocks. And those 2 events helped us to get to the last event, which was more people, a lot of which were our friends, but some not necessarily. And it just was a building block. And I think, again, with young people, dude, my kids, like I made way more mistakes than they did, man. I was way more nervous than them because they didn't think about it like that. They had all these experiences ahead of time, and they just sort of stepped into it, and they didn't have the kind of like, oh, well, how am I going to look, or what is it going to be, and da-da-da-da.
Yeah, so I guess the theme that I'm hearing is creating the lifestyle around it. So it's just a natural part of your lifestyle versus like something that's unfamiliar, that's being introduced randomly. I don't know.
Yeah, and it's not like we're, even with snowboarding, right? Like, they learned on the bunny slope for a very, very long time, and then when they got good enough, then we took them on the lift, and now they're riding blues, and they have the foundational knowledge of what it means to be on a board on a mountain. Like, if you're in this situation, this is what you can go to. You get on something that's too steep for you, you're just gonna get on your back edge and just get down.
Yeah, this story reminds me of my partner and her relationship with her dad.
Yeah,
I think her dad took her camping when she was like 5 or 6 years old. Yeah, and then they walked like deep into the desert or the forest, right?
Yeah, crazy.
And then finally he's like, "Hey, you're gonna help us find our way back."
Wow.
And then he's like, "I have food for 2 days, so you take care of the rest."
Wow. Trial by fire. Literally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not as hardcore as that, because I think my kids would just like freak out. But that kind of stuff it's important, I think.
Yeah.
Because, dude, people are so disconnected, period. The thing that we're connected to is a phone and this like false reality, But, dude, like, how fortunate are we to have Mother Earth,
Yeah.
To have the trees and the forests and the oceans and to be able to experience all of these things and enjoy them. Yeah. They're there. It's
yeah. So I think that's a good segue into the next things that I want to ask you about.
Yeah, is
speaking of Mother Earth, meaning nature.
Yeah.
Let's talk about what your thoughts and experiences are around plant medicine and decriminalize nature.
I have a lot of, so I think one really important thing that people lose sight of, especially because like we're in this like age of like, now there's all this like AI and there's so much technology that's like being thrust upon us, and we've reached this kind of place culturally where that's only going to continue to happen, right? Like, you know, when I was growing up, dude, like the biggest technological innovation for a long time was like VHS. And then like the CD came out, we're like, holy shit, you know?
Yeah.
Now there's so many things, whether it be CRISPR or AI or crypto, or like there's so much innovation happening so fast that it's hard to keep track of. But I feel what gets lost are these ancient technologies, right? These very ancient old technologies that have been very helpful to humans for thousands and thousands of years, right? How to relate to the world, how to be connected to the planet, how to find deeper meaning in yourself, you know, how to really help you relate not only to the world, but to yourself, how to help you navigate what it means to be you, your idiosyncrasies, your neuroses, your anxieties. Like, what can you do to get through those things, right? And that's honestly what a lot of plant medicine is, you know, and a lot of these things are extremely old. So, you know, they kind of call it right now the psychedelic renaissance, you know, which I think sort of implies like some new shit is, you know, really happening. And some new shit is happening in terms of, you know, some things that are very positive, but others which are just sort of like, in my opinion, a kind of a money grab, right? Like, you know, especially from big pharma, like, oh, we can go create all these new drugs. And instead of giving somebody an SSRI, which is, you know, what you're given for depression, right? Like now we can maybe give them some other new pill and have them continue to buy this pill for 20, 30 years, whatever, right? And so a big part of me wants people to understand that a lot of these things that now there's all these PhDs and these scientists, and don't get me wrong, like it's important to understand, hey, these things are safe, this is what's kind of happening, etc. But people have been working with plant medicines for thousands of years and have been totally fine, you know? And I think that part of the story gets lost as experts, you know, which are typically, you know, cis white dudes from, you know, science, right, are now like experts in all of these things, where the real experts, bro, are indigenous people who have been holding and guiding and enabling these ancient technologies to still continue to exist through colonization, you know, for literally over 1,000 years. And I think for me personally, unfortunately, what I'm seeing, you know, is there's just a real lack of, honestly, like anything from gratitude to just knowledge, right? And I'll give you a perfect example, right? So your average psychiatrist that's going to prescribe you Zoloft or whatever, it's very Western. You don't, it's a very Western concept to prescribe a medication and have never done it, right? So you're like, yeah, that kind of makes sense, right? Like, I'm not depressed, so I'm going to give somebody this thing, and yeah, they should take it because like there is a, you know, FDA drug trial, it does stuff, great, you know, I'm going to do this. That is 100% not something that should happen with plant medicine ever, right? Like, you never want to take or go on a journey or be in a ceremony with somebody that has no experience with that medicine, right? And this is a component that you're seeing right now in the space, right? It's like, oh, this person's a doctor, you know, yeah, sure, they should be able to prescribe this or give it to me and do all these things. And so one of the first is ketamine, right? So ketamine is a very well-known, you know, drug and chemical component that people use for all kinds of things, right? So when my daughter broke her arm, they put her in a K-hole basically, right? And so a lot of, you know, EPMD, like not EPMD, that's hilarious, but a lot of, you know, yeah, you know, right. A lot of folks utilize these like something like ketamine, and it's, you know, it's very safe. It kind of knocks you out. Your heart rate doesn't, you know, it stays very consistent. So there's a lot, it's like as a medical compound, it's really well known, right? And so this kind of thing sort of exploded where, you know what, we can sort of provide, like, now there's all these ketamine clinics, right? It's like, hey, let's give a bunch of people ketamine as an antidepressant, you know? And you get a bunch of doctors, you know, that have never done ketamine that are injecting people, you know, and a lot of these kind of concepts about like set and setting that you'll hear with psychedelic journeys like don't exist. So people are like, you know, under fluorescent lights on phones, you know, like in these like crazy K-hole type experiences. And it's terrible for people because, again, it's a very Western thing to give people medicine that you've never experienced, right? And I think, you know, your average person who we've been talking about anxiety and depression and just all of these like, you know, symptoms of like modern world because of a lack of connection to the planet and because of a lack of connection with other people are in need, you know, like the statistics they're mind boggling in terms of how unhappy young women are and also young men, you know, that's why people are getting guns and like going around shooting people. But one thing that motivates me in this space is trying to educate people on what are the right things to think about and what is your checklist if you're about to go through one of these ceremonies, right? If you're interested in doing this work, what are some of the red flags that you should, you know, be concerned about, you know? And a lot of it, to be quite honest, a lot of the learnings that I've had and concepts that have helped me understand plant medicine have come from dance, to be, you know, because it's very similar, right? Like it's similar in terms of, dude, how many people have you come across in dance where they were like, yo, I teach breaking, you know, and you go and you watch them dance and you're like, you are terrible. You're you know, just because you watched one YouTube video or took one class, you have no right to teach this form, right? And, you know, through my experience with dance, like you realize it's not about no one has a certificate. I'm not taking a breaking class or a house class because somebody has a certificate in breaking or house. My rationale is like, what crew are they a part of? What battles have they been in? What's their lineage? And for me, this concept of lineage that I learned through dance from being like, yo, no, this is skill methods. This is rock steady. Like this is cross one from freestyle session. Like all of these things that pedigree, this is, you know, this is Brian Greene's footwork, you know, like that kind of pedigree comes from lineage. It comes from, and even with capoeira, which is analogous as well, right?
Super heavy in Lineage.
Yeah, everything that is this type of, you know, education through oral tradition. There is no book or whatever it might be, but it's like, no, somebody learned it and now they're teaching it to me. And then I become a teacher and I teach it to somebody else, right? And so my mestre, mestre Urubu Malandro, his mestre is mestre Swasuna, you know? And so I learned very early on about the concept of lineage and why that's important. Because I would go to clubs and I would hear like dudes, I'd be like, dude, you should not be teaching. You have no business teaching. Why do you think you should do that, right? The exact same thing is happening in psychedelics, right? Where people like have this sort of like savior complex, and they, you know, there's a lot of narcissists in psychedelics, bro, and there are people that just want to that want to become gurus, right? And like want to save people and help people, and then really have this like adoration as to like, oh, I save people. Look what I have done. That's just not how it works. And you have people that are like jumping out of the woodwork that can buy these medicines online and say they're experts at them and give them to people, you know, and people have terrible, terrible experiences. These things are extremely safe. They've been used correctly for thousands of years. Yeah, there wasn't a freaking study about it, but what do you need? A study, or do you need to know that people have been leveraging these things and using them right for like thousands of years?
Yeah, because I'm definitely a believer of science, but I also recognize that there's some things that's already proven and coexistent even without the studies. So, for example, if you see one person doing something and they're the only one that's successful at it, then maybe you have an anomaly, right? But if you see like large groups, communities all across the world, for thousands of years, successfully doing it, then it's not an anomaly. There's something there already.
Exactly. And I think, don't get me wrong, dude, I'm a firm believer in science, scientific method. I guess like my critique is, who is an expert, and why does some guy that literally just started doing this several years ago in terms of research, why is that person on a higher pedestal than an indigenous leader from the Amazon whose family has been holding this tradition, that lineage, for thousands of years, with their process and their thing? And you're seeing this sort of spin out where people are trying to make an ayahuasca pill. People are trying to remove the psychoactive component of psychedelics. They're trying to take away the hallucinations that happen and the visions that happen. They're trying to like formulate a product that they can sell to somebody, right? That doesn't take into an account what this thing is, right?
Yeah, I never really thought about it literally until this conversation, but now that we're talking about this, it does seem like in Western medicine, there's a disconnect between like the set and setting versus like, hey, you're gonna take this thing, but not really have any mindfulness around it. Versus like, hey, we're gonna do this whole ceremony. You're gonna think about these things. Here's how you prepare yourself. Versus like, here's a pill. See you later.
Yeah, I mean, there are, especially with psychedelics, because like the 60s were a big time, and this concept of set and setting to me even is very much a byproduct of a Western even concept, to be honest, because like it's like, what's your mindset and what's the setting, right? So yeah, you want to make sure those things are good so that you don't have a quote unquote bad trip, right? And I think that there's another component. There's a big difference between doing plant medicines or just psychedelics recreationally, which is like, yo, I'm at a concert, we're on mushrooms, this shit is tight, this is crazy, versus doing it therapeutically. And typically when you're doing things in a therapeutic way, ideally with plant medicine, you're doing way higher dosage. And hopefully, ideally, you really should be doing it with somebody that's trained in that medicine. Because what a shaman or a leader, a ceremony leader is doing, they're creating the set and setting. They're creating that setting. It doesn't matter if you're in a closet. Those people are so good at what they do. They're building a safe container that you can be in on a high dosage of a psychedelic where you are safe, right? You might go through a lot. It might be the most terrifying experience of your life, right? But you are in this sort of protective container that's being created by the person that's leading the ceremony, right? And don't get me wrong, there's permutations and components to it, and a lot of clinical trials that include mushrooms and even MDMA. I'm an investor in MAPS, and they're about to have MDMA is about to be federally legal if it's prescribed for a specific process for PTSD, right? They've gone through the FDA clinical trials piece, which is a very expensive thing, but the drug will be, the drug in a specific setting administered by specific people will be federally legal, which is very different than like even cannabis, which is federally illegal. It's legal in certain states, but it's not legal across the country, right? So that's one aspect. And so the sort of medicalization is one component. The decriminalization is a different one, right? And then the whole concept of decriminalization and what Decriminalize Nature really created, which pretty much anybody can kind of understand, is the foundational argument is I should be able to have a relationship with nature, right? Why shouldn't I? What government and what organizational body should tell me how I should enjoy or get down with nature, right? These aren't like pharmaceuticals. These aren't things that are made in a lab. Like they're either, a ground down thing, knob from a cactus like peyote. It's a mushroom that gets dried, which, ayahuasca is a brew that's made from a vine and a leaf, right? Who is to say that I can't have a relationship with Mother Nature?
Yeah, and also taking one step further is to go as far as saying that these substances have no medicinal value.
Yeah, well, I think, what's ended up happening in this sort of new paradigm is it's clear there is a medicinal value. What's happening is people are trying to profit off of that medicinal value, right? Companies are trying to come in and, there's a company called Compass Pathways, and they're trying to patent psilocybin. Really? And yeah, and it's like, it was a huge, point of contention in the community. It's like, how can you do this? And the reason why they're doing it, because that's how drugs work, right? The way that drugs work is it's extremely, there's a necessity for this to a degree with certain things, right? If you're going to create a heart medication, you want to make sure that there isn't like a super stringent process where the stuff is tested before somebody can go buy it, so it doesn't just kill you right away. Yeah. Like that makes sense, right? But what that drug company is doing, and just, even if it's like Viagra or whatever it is, right? Like they own that chemical compound for 7 to 8 years, right? And in that 7 to 8 years, if you want that compound, you have to buy it from them. And you buy it from them, and that's how they make a ton of money. And that ton of money is how they pay back and make money off of the hundreds of millions of dollars it took to take a chemical compound through FDA clinical trials, first, second, and third, before it's available to the general public, right? That's how pharma works, right? It's extremely expensive to take a drug, a compound, through the FDA process. And the goal of doing that is once you've done that, you make billions, right? So that's why these companies are trying to like patent things like psilocybin and own that chemical compound, even though it exists freely in nature, right? So that they own, and they're the only people you can buy it from.
That's like nuts to think about. Just owning a piece of nature. That's like, yeah.
It's super wrong, right? Clearly it's super wrong, right? And so what other people are trying to do is like they're trying to take that compound and slightly change it and maybe remove a part or add a part or whatever, so that they now have their own compound that they can patent. And that
I heard that's really big in China. But,
really?
Not necessarily psilocybin, but so I heard that in the United States, for example, let's say all the derivatives of cannabis, like that whole tree is categorized, right? And grouped together. But in China, it's like down to the individual ones. So if they make one illegal, they can just easily tweak it and make something else that's currently not.
I mean, people are gonna like modify things, right? And again, it comes back to, why are you doing that? It's typically because there's a profit motive. These people are like, hey, we were trying to help people. It's like, no, you're trying to make a lot of money. And I think, for me, what's super obvious is like the battle for our minds, and our planet are inextricably linked through plant medicine. Because these indigenous people that are the guardians of these medicines and have been the holders of some of these medicines, they're also the ones on the front line fighting for water, fighting for the Amazon not to be deforested, like part of nature, and, an integral part of these extraordinarily important systems, like staying healthy, these indigenous people. So, not only have they been holding these medicines for a very long time, they're also the protectors of our natural world. And we lose sight of that, and so I think, from my perspective, that stuff it just needs to be talked about more, because I think people lose sight of that, and I think that this stuff is about to become very popular, right? So what's happening on a state level is, like Oregon is an example, they're moving to a quasi decriminal, quasi legalization model, right? On a state level, this just happened in Denver, in Colorado as well, similar to cannabis. So a lot of this is being motivated by people that are ex-cannabis people. They're like, hey, it didn't work out for cannabis for me, but like, or maybe it did. How do I kind of, impact policy, some from a sense of benevolence, some from a sense of profit, and create these systems where, just like it is with cannabis, you can go and purchase cannabis, right? In everywhere in California, right? Similarly, people are trying to do things with psychedelics, not where it's completely recreational, like you can just go and buy mushrooms at a mushroom store, but you can pay to go have a mushroom trip or a psilocybin trip. You have to do it through a state licensed center with state, certified people. What's happening is that shit is like $3,000 for a weekend for one person, right? It's so cost absorbent, right? Because it's all of these people have to like take their cut and make sure all of these things are working. Whereas, the decriminalized model, which is like, hey, you should have a relationship with nature. If there are people that are creating ceremonies and they're doing small events for people, leave them alone. Let them like grow what they want, let them do the ceremonies that they want, and enable that level of healing because it's necessary, deprioritize. That decriminalization is essence, especially in the city of Oakland. That's like the whole concept, right? So the brilliance behind the idea for Decriminalize Nature was all plant-based medicines in Oakland and now Santa Cruz, like all over Michigan, even Washington D.C., right? If it's ayahuasca, not peyote, because there's the native Indian. There's a whole component of that.
The Huichos from Mexico, right?
Yeah, so it's a longer story, but basically the Native American Church, they've been using peyote ceremonially for a very long time, and so like peyote specifically is not part of a lot of these decriminalized models in order to allow that very limited resource to not be overly consumed by people. But you have these plant, like in psilocybin, ayahuasca, these plant medicines that are decriminalized. And what that means is they're deprioritized by police. So it's much easier to go to like your city council and put a resolution forward that doesn't make it legal to sell or buy or have any kind of commerce involved. But really what decriminalization is like, hey, police, if you find somebody and they have a bunch of mushrooms, that's not a priority for you. Leave them alone, in essence, right? And that model, because it's like, it's literally decentralized. It's like, hey, follow this playbook and go do this in your own city. And then what happens is this whole decriminalization process, right? And it's very different from the FDA federally regulated, medicalization process,
What are some of the biggest pushback or hurdles that model has faced?
The decriminalization model, it's just scale, right? Because it's like the way that it kind of needs to happen is by motivated people in towns and cities.
And is the process similar or different depending on the town or city?
They're generally very similar, right? That's why that's such a brilliant model, because like your city councils all kind of operate in a similar way. You can put forth a proposition, and if you get a council member, to co-sign it, and this is happening. It's not that insane because there's no commerce involved, right? They're not like saying here's the rules to sell it, because of course that's its own big huge thing to figure out, right? It's just like, hey, police, you have more important things to worry about than somebody with some mushrooms, leave them alone, right? And so what's kind of happening on a state level is they call it sort of decriminalization, but it's really a way to try to like legalize and to many people's opinions, profit off of, hey, can we create a model on a statewide model, right? And maybe to get something on a statewide ballot, you're talking of, you know, maybe like $5 to $8 million, right? It's not $150 to $200 million to take a drug through discovery. So you now, if you've kind of created this opportunity, can kind of be in the driver's seat, like who's the governor going to pick to be on the board to kind of figure out the public policy? How is this stuff going to work? How are the centers going to work? What's the certification process? All of these things. But what's ending up happening is these things are stupid expensive, right? And so, you know, like I said, like, you know, in Oregon, it might cost you $3,500 to be with a licensed therapist to do psilocybin for a weekend. That's completely cost prohibitive to so many people that probably need that. Yeah. Let alone, you know, marginalized people, you know, Black, brown people that have been, you know, institutionally demoralized and kept down. You know, you're making it in essence impossible for this whole kind of like group of people that could really use this healing, you know, because it's becoming cost prohibitive. So what are we creating is a system, and this is exactly what happened in cannabis, right? The number one thing that happened in cannabis is like, who went to jail? Black and brown people for decades. Who funded and like built and put all the money into all these things? Venture capital, right? Like a very small amount of people that just had a bunch of money that tried to capitalize. These aren't even stoners, right? These are people that like saw an opportunity to go put in a bunch of money to like, in essence, completely control the system, right? And I think that is something that again misses the entire point of like what this stuff is. You know, these medicines are really a gift from Earth to us to help us. You know, it shouldn't be controlled by a very few amount of people to make a bunch of money. That's the last thing that should be happening here. And again, this conversation about, you know, indigenous people and them being the gatekeepers, rightfully so, to these things, and being left out of the conversation is because you'll see these like big psychedelic panels and conferences. It's just a bunch of white guys. Yeah. You know, and it's like, yo, this is not right, you know? And I think outside of it not being right, it's just also less effective, you know, because if you sat in ceremony with someone from the Amazon, you know, versus some guy that like just got into this stuff 2 years ago and is like gonna play some Enya while you're, you know, like you're on a bed and give you like a twig or some stupid ass shit, or like, you're like, come on, bro. You know what I mean? Don't get me wrong. Like there are people that are doing good work. I'm like oversimplifying components to it. It's just not the same. And I think there needs to be obviously intelligence around how this stuff should happen, but mostly for individuals. You know, as somebody that's always been like seeking the truth, you know, and just seeking the source of things, whether that be through dance or, you know, movement, you know,
what are some things that can be done or people should be mindful of in order to be respectful of the indigenous voices?
That's a great question. And it's something that I'm trying to put a lot of attention to. There's definitely organizations that bring indigenous leaders. I think how to actually like make, you know, how to pay them, honestly. You know, what are the ways to keep their centers alive, to keep their cultures alive, to have them be able to educate their children, you know, have them be able to continue being holders of these medicines. That to me is like a very obvious one, right? And there are nonprofits that do a great job of, you know, helping kind of just raise just literal capital for these people. But I think one thing that interests me a lot is outside of like the money component is just the education component, right? Because I think we're just looking for things right now, man. Like I think a lot of people, we're searching, because we're unhappy. This thing that we find ourselves in. Yeah, we can get delivery and some nice shoes and have an expensive phone or whatever, but we're just fundamentally like unhappy. I think people understand that. They might not be able to put the words to it, but you can see it across the board. Like I think that the Surgeon General just put out like it's just as bad to be lonely as it is to be a cigarette smoker. Like that's how bad it is for your health, and especially, dude, we just came out of a pandemic where everyone was alone, and so I think people are searching, and I think one thing that motivates me is trying to find a way to educate people that are interested about this stuff, that it's not about, finding some MD or science expert and doing something. It's, ideally you can work with somebody that's part of a lineage that has been trained, that has been to the jungle, because like that experience is going to be so much more powerful for you in the journey that you're trying to take than any, pharmaceutical or other kind of quasi retreat thing or whatever. Right. So how can I help with that like education piece? It's something that just very, it's something that I'm very much doing now.
Yeah, very, very interesting. When I hear of the education and the lineage, I also think of, in some regards, some of my critique regarding the New Age community, where there's like psychedelic tourism, and you go to these places, and then there's like self-prescribed shamans that's not part of any lineage, or maybe even American shamans that kind of just took on that meaning without any type of connection to those tribes.
Yeah, and those are the questions you have to ask, right? And so someone that's going to go to one of these retreats needs to ask that retreat, who are your ceremony holders? Who are your ceremony leaders? Who taught them? And if they're like, oh, they got taught by many people, red fucking flag, Oh, like what style and where specifically, like if it is something like ayahuasca, like, where is their lineage? Is it from like, tribes like the Hunikuin in Brazil, or is it from, which they hold ayahuasca in a very different way than the Shipibo do from Peru, right? And there are these nuances to this stuff where, yeah, you're totally right. And this is like a thing now. People are spending, $8K to go to Costa Rica, to go to a retreat. Don't get me wrong. Some of them are legitimate. What some of them are, this combination of narcissism and profit, where these like new school gurus just, they want to be, they want to get all this adoration. They want to be like saviors of people, Real shamans, man, like they're not your guru at all. You're not following them. They're not dropping like wisdom bombs on you for you to like, recite and shit. No, that's not it. It's you are doing the work. It's you. You have to do the hard work. What you're leveraging them for is creating a safe container for you to do that work. Because that's what you don't want, right? You don't want to be on these very powerful medicines in a place with somebody that has no fucking, has never done this stuff themselves. And like that seems very obvious. But due to a lot of these people that are jumping in, like I get these ads now serving, get into psychedelic medicine, take my 60-day class. It's like, get the fuck out of here, dude. If you haven't been in a fucking hut in the jungle for 10 years, don't do this shit. And so, but that's something that seems very obvious, especially if you've gone through dance and you've had experience with charlatans acting like they know some shit that they don't, and actual people that are part of a real lineage and a real tradition, So that's what I'm motivated by, because I think we need it. Again, it's like we are totally disconnected from the planet and destroying it. We are totally disconnected from ourselves, killing ourselves. It's literally in one place, and these indigenous people, thankful to them, have been guiding this through terrible things, man, you know, through conquistadors, through the almost eradication of like who they are. You know, in Brazil, like everything around like the rubber plantations, like, you know, and now these communities are finding, you know, they have been doing this, and we're very lucky, dude. Because like that's the thing, dude. To me, nothing like your phone and like this like dark mirror. Don't get me wrong, you got technology is useful, right? Like shit's useful, but the only thing that can combat something as powerful as always on 24/7 information are these extremely powerful psychedelic experiences, you know, because like nothing, you know, therapy just isn't going to do it. Talk as long as you want, you know, don't get me wrong, as like a therapist or, you know, functional or whatever, but like something at a certain point has to be as powerful or even more strong, you know.
It can't be, as far as I can tell, it can't be replicated.
Oh, dude, yeah. I mean, I think it comes, you know, again, if you're a student and if you're, you know, searching for the truth, you know, hopefully you get put onto a path, where it just is so evident.
What are some misconceptions that you or somebody else may have had before coming closer to the source about all this?
I don't even know if I'm at the source as much as
to the source, at least, you know.
I mean, dude, you know, a lot of people smoke weed. A lot used to be like, yeah, don't do that shit. But now it's like, it's kind of like at some point in college, you know, somebody gave you a joint or something. Like, so like in general, and I feel the same way about mushrooms, to be quite honest. Like, not everybody, don't get me wrong, but people might have had some sort of experience with psychedelics at some point in time, right? There is a massive, there's a lot of benefit in doing psychedelics recreationally. There's a massive difference between recreational and therapeutic, and as far as my definition is.
Okay.
Right? I think that's a big misconception, you know? Like, hey, I did this stuff like at a concert, like what is this going to be? It was shocking to me, and I've only been doing stuff like this, like therapeutically, since 2019. So not that long, but night and day, you know? And a big component is just like the dosage, you know? Because so what the science currently believes is there's a component of your brain called the default motor network, right? Default mode network, default mode. And so in essence, it's what they consider where your ego resides. And your ego is very useful for most things, right? Like it helps you navigate the world. It propels you day to day. It gives you a sense of who you are. It's your identity, right? But anxiety, depression, a lot of these sort of things, and I'm kind of simplifying it, but they're in essence like, you know, you get caught into repeated behavioral patterns and you can't escape those, right? You kind of get stuck in this track and you can't get out of the track of feeling a certain way, you know, or repeating certain things. And one analogy of what psychedelics does is in essence control alt deletes, literally like hard reboots that component of your brain. And they talk about this, like you know, you may hear of a term called ego death, right? Which is in essence like you don't exist. Your ego dies, you die, right? There is no you that has parents, has a partner, has a job, you know, and that can manifest itself in different ways. You know, like you could be a dot on a two-dimensional thing. Like you are literally, you know, nothingness in the expanse of the universe, right? And some of the thinking behind that is like, in essence, what you're doing is it's like when you're, you know, using your computer and it just gets kind of slow and clunky because you have too many freaking tabs open, you know, you have too many programs open, your RAM is all used up, right?
I would imagine that it's kind of like a state that babies might be in, because as you know, not to say that babies are on psychedelics, but like, you know, when a baby looks at a tree, doesn't have the vocabulary to say tree yet, right? It just sees it for as it is.
I think somewhat it's an identity thing.
Okay.
Right. Like, and I think even, I don't know enough of, but I think even young kids, like they get a sense of them. Right. And I think that's kind of what you lose in this state is you lose your identity because it's literally being reset, you know? And it's super powerful. And I think it's one of the things that and they don't know the entire side. That like is a current theory, but that's one of the reasons why people that go through these things, it's so powerful for them, you know, because it is a way to kind of break through these like, you know, neuroses, cobwebs, these like things that hold you down. I think especially as you get older, man, like we develop certain behaviors and patterns, and you know, anxieties are just like hardcore patterns that you can't escape. It's like a state of mind that like it holds you down, you know? And I think part of what is the thinking behind some of these substances, you know, is that. And don't get me wrong, like that's a current theory, and maybe part of it's true, maybe it's not, whatever. The reality is it's like for some people it works, and it's been working for thousands of years, you know, especially when it's done in these containers in these ways that, you know, people have been perfecting and working through over thousands of years. I'm not like 10 or 50 or 100,000.
Yeah, you know, it's good to take into the context that it's like older than the United States itself, you know.
Way older.
Way older than the whole country.
Way older, because the US isn't even that old, right?
Yeah.
1700s, bro. It's like nothing. It's not nothing, but it just, you know, I think California didn't exist 100, 200 years ago or something. You know?
Yeah, so I'm curious, with your background in neuroscience and your relationship to nature, like how does the two merge or navigate each other? You know, like do you ever kind of correlate like, oh, this experience?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that really got me into neuroscience was I was doing a lot of psychedelics in high school.
Okay.
And so there was a professor, his name was Gunther Rose, and he was just this wild ass dude that would go to like, and I was reading a lot of Terence McKenna, who was like one of the first dudes that just like went to the Amazon and like found these indigenous people and would eat all these crazy things, you know? And so that was always something that just like piqued my interest. And I always was, you know, enamored by or like interested in the full potential of like the brain. And, you know, again, like we kind of only use like a very small part of it, right? Technically, you know, but then you have people that are in these sort of altered states that can do so much or gain so much, you know. And a powerful thing happened to me when I was in college. So when your eyes are open, okay, if you're measuring brain waves, when your eyes are open, like that thing is going off the charts because your neurons are firing so hard by all of this information that's coming in from light, right? And so one of the things that we did in college was we measured the brainwave of somebody that was really good at this sort of transcendental meditation from like a Navajo tradition. And dude, with his eyes open, could get his brain waves to like beta, right? Like it was insane, you know? And again, like your eyes are open, it just fucking spiking. And through his meditational process, he was able to like do something to his mind that just made no sense.
So like, help me understand the context or magnitude of how difficult that is.
It's impossible. I don't even know, you know.
So it's not even like a matter of difficulty. It's just as far as you know, and I would assume like something you can't even control.
Yeah, you're like, how do you control how hard your brain is firing? I have no fucking clue, dude. You know, it's like I don't even know where to begin. You know, it's just the dude was so deep into this practice, right? He had a connection to his mind, again, as a result of an ancient indigenous technology, right? He was doing things that just defied scientific convention. And those things exist. And like this one professor was like all about understanding that stuff, you know? And there's like all kinds of levels of neuroscience, right? Like my eventual like advisor was, she was just measuring one neural path, like one like pathway in a crab gut, right? Just to understand how this one neuron, you know, activated and didn't activate under different circumstances, because that's another part of the science, right? And so anyway, for me, that's what kind of got me. I was like, you know, motivated in all of this to begin with, was this idea that there's a lot more to our lives and our brains than we let on or we know about, because we just kind of are dropped into this thing, you know, and that's just how humans are, right? Like you kind of follow a path and somebody tells you to do something and you kind of do it, and like everybody else is doing it, and like, dude, look at our current existence, you know. And it's hard to escape it, but when you really think about what literally we're achieving or trying to do, or why we're so unhappy, it's like pretty obvious, man, you know. And I think, you know, as humans, and especially as a parent, dude, because I'm in my 40s, man, you know, so I've been very fortunate to have a very full, amazing life, you know, very grateful, you know, again, right time, right place, amazing, you know, opportunities, amazing experiences, amazing creativity, but I have children. So what am I going to be able to think through and create, and what tools can I give them to help them better navigate the world so that they don't fucking, like, you know, become extraordinarily depressed and suicidal? Because that's literally the trend.
Yeah.
Those are the prevailing numbers, you know? And it's like, you know, we don't even think about, like, we, at this point, we have become desensitized to people taking machine guns into public spaces and shooting people. It happens all the time. We don't even, you know, and so I think, to me, that's not okay. And, you know, I'm fearful for my kids, you know, honestly. And so what can I do? What can I be involved with, you know? And coming back from Brazil and just being a part of these communities, especially in January, it was because everyone had this grand notion. It's like, I'm going to move to a commune and go create this thing, and just going to be me and my homies, you know. This crew that produces this festival, they did that.
Okay.
You know, like 28 years ago, this woman who kind of comes from this tradition called the Santo Daime, and Santo Daime is basically an ayahuasca religion in Brazil that is known throughout Brazil, and it's a legal religion in Brazil, and they use ayahuasca ceremoniously as part of their religion. So this woman was a piece of that, kind of created her own thing, and just built this community, you know, 27 years ago. They produce a festival that happens every other year. And, you know, man, what a different society and group of people that was, you know, just in terms of their togetherness, their connection to sacred through medicine, their love of the planet, you know, what they've sort of built for themselves. When I saw and experienced that, I was like, you know, that's what I'm trying to do. I don't know how fast it's going to happen. I don't know what it's going to take, you know, but there has to be another way that makes people think about the current way. Because to me, this current way is just untenable. You know, it's leading people to be depressed and suicidal and violent killers, right? So what can we do as a society, if anything, to educate people, to combat that, and try to see something different, man?
So let's say that someone wants to get closer to nature and wants to get closer to these ceremonies, right? How would someone even go about finding a shaman, a qualified one? Because it sounds very remote. It sounds more like maybe you have to be there. You have to know somebody. Like,
I mean, how did you find like a dope dance teacher? Exact same way.
Okay.
Same exact thing. Yes, certain things feel very challenging and it's like impossible to figure out. But dude, there's communities of people that exist and you can find people online. You need to ask the right questions, right? Like, what is your lineage? What are your values? Do you serve BIPOC people? Is integration a part of your ceremonies? And the concept of integration is you talk to the ceremony leader shaman both before and after your ceremony. So you're integrating your experience. You're not just doing this thing and then, throwing out.
I've heard of some critiques of like ceremonies over here where you do a ceremony and you get sent home afterwards, whereas the critique was like over in other countries, you may even spend up like a week with a shaman and you guys just kind of bond and talk and
I mean, if you have the time and that's a thing, but everything is again with the level of intention. I don't know if I've been to ceremonies in other countries. I did not hang with the leader for a week. Yes, that can exist, but it's not, how are you going to make your thing work? And what are the things that have to happen versus the things that are nice to haves? And I just think any kind of integration is better than no integration.
Okay.
Right. And I think even if that integration is, the ceremony ends over a weekend and you then talk to this person on the phone, that's still integration. Because again, it's not about the person that you're next to. It's about the work that you're doing, and I think that gets missed. Like people think like, people have this perception that a shaman is some sort of like guru that you're following and that's giving you sage-like advice and you're needing to sit at their feet and like bow down to them and do penance. This is not it, bro. It's like, it's a personal thing. And I think as humans, we tend to lose sight of that. No one is going to do anything for us outside of ourselves. And we have to own that responsibility. We have to be open to doing the work because no one's going to do it for us. You can't just go to something and be like, oh, I did this thing with this person. Now this person healed me. You have to heal yourself, and you heal yourself through work, through the process of wanting to do that work.
Would it be all right to ask like some of the work that you feel you've been called to do?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I have a very good friend that has been in the jungles, has been a part of the culture or through the Shipibo for like 27 years, leading ceremony for about 13. And I was able to sit with her. And it's a very different, it's a therapeutic experience versus a recreational one. Right. And it's fucking terrifying. It's like it's not like, there are parts of it that can be that way, that are very strong, very powerful. You completely lose sight of who you are and your existence. But at the same time, like the way that I like to describe it is when we're going to remember this conversation, okay? I'm going to remember this conversation mostly by seeing you through my eyes, right? Because that's kind of like normal, right? Like you think about an experience or a moment, you're in your body and you're seeing through your eyes, like what happened, right? And maybe we had an argument, and again, I'm in my body and I'm seeing through me, right? But I feel one thing that happens in these experiences is you can be outside of your body and you could be above, you could be below, you could be so the sense of perspective that you can get on a situation is very different because you're not inside yourself, right? And so that can be a very powerful tool to how you relate to your lover, to your parents, to your children, to other people in your life, right? It can give you a totally different sense of perspective, period. And so that's a very powerful thing that can happen in these sort of circumstances and settings, as well as just, being open to the divine, to be quite honest, to this thing that really does not make any fucking sense at all. It doesn't. Like we are so compartmentalized and so cause effect, like I do this, therefore that, I buy this, I do this, like da 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 da. Dude, sometimes you just have to get blasted into like a fucking another dimension to just realize like, yo, we are somehow on a flying rock for a very short amount of time, enjoy it, help people, gain perspective, instead of just being so focused on like this thing I need or how I'm going to show up and look and da 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 da, and I think again, it comes back to that connection to earth and like people are doing it. Cause like, dude, I think people are very simple, like what do most humans do culturally? It's like, dude, we like to sing songs, we like to be together, sing songs around the fire,
Yeah.
that's kind of it. And then I think we lose sight of that, dude. I think we lose that connection to ourselves and the planet and the earth. And I think it's an important thing to try to hold on to,
Yeah. So with spreading this type of information and connection, do you find yourself like thinking about ways you can leverage your skills as a organizer from flavor group, for example, connecting the experience to the end goal?
Yeah. So I started producing events. They're called dava. Dava in Hindi is medicine. And so a motivation for producing these events was because people kind of know, I've involved in decriminalization, like I'm something about psychedelics. This guy does whatever, right? They don't really know what that is. And a lot of people have questions, and a lot of people that are my friends, are dealing with all kinds of stuff, like every other human, problems with their partnerships as married people, how they relate to their children, like depression, anxiety on just getting older, and, the life that they live is not what they anticipated it was going to be. And so they're like, there's this group of people that have these sort of questions. And a big idea for me was like, how can I create something that is a way to begin in this space? So that was the whole kind of beginning. And the music is something that I think a lot of people, there's another misconception about this stuff too. A lot of these traditions have very specific and very beautiful and amazing musical traditions. Because especially with like ayahuasca ceremonies, like somebody is singing or playing music for the entire ceremony for 6 to 8 hours. Okay. And depending upon where in the Amazon, like that their culture is and originated, their language is different, their music is different, what they're doing is different. If you can dance or move is different, right? And again, it's like, I've always been motivated by movement and art and music. And so I have an event coming up that ties into this concept of lineage. So one of the leader, she is part of the Shipibo tradition. Then there's going to be two musicians that are part of this Brazilian tradition called the Hunikuin, where there's this like the way that they do it is you first there's chants that are prayers, right? But then they whip out guitars, and there's like basically a band that plays, and you can get up and dance and move, so the concept or the idea is to have it's a conceptual event based upon the notion of lineage, right? And how do these two musical things that utilize the same medicine, how do they function and flow together, right?
That's a good point you brought up. I think the closest thing that I've experienced that embodies what you're talking about is when I went down to Mexico, the Yucatan area a few years ago with a group, and we did a temazcal. Yeah, and if you want to be like very disconnected, then it's what I would call like the original sauna, But the fact that there was somebody or a group leading us in there, playing the drums and doing all this stuff, it completely changed their experience. We're actually it's funny because before So I had the Temescal set up towards the end of our trip, right? And before we got to the Temescal, the group was having a little chaotic energy, and there was like some frustrations with maybe the weather or mosquitoes, just some small stuff that like maybe we're bringing over from America, just like the you can use the comforts, right? But granted, the Temescal didn't have any AC, obviously. Didn't have any light. We're just sitting on dirt,
Rock,
right? And then after that, everybody was like blissed out. And we're like, dude, we didn't need any, and it's all on.
I know. It's perspective, right?
Yeah.
Your perspective changed as a result of going through an experience that was, powerful.
Yeah.
And I think, again, people want that, man. People need it. Hopefully people find the right ways to go and do it, because a lot of like conventional stuff is like we're plugged into a system that's like, you drink a bunch of coffee in the morning just to get through your workday, and you drink a bunch of alcohol in the evening to just like to cope with your, your work. And you just rinse and repeat that for 75, 80 years, and then you're gone.
Yeah.
So, I think creating opportunities to reconnect with people and the planet is the most important work I think that there is.
Yeah, I really appreciate you doing the work. And in regards to spreading the message, I know you were involved with How to Change Your Mind, right? On Netflix. Yeah. So what was that experience like? And did you feel a positive trend after the show in regards to like the reception of other people to this movement?
Yeah. So we were recorded as being, because I was on the board of advisors for Decrim Nature. And so I kind of joined with Decrim right after they were able to get the city of Oakland to decriminalize these plant medicines. And the next part of our journey was trying to build a framework that ensured, a level of access for people that could really use the medicine, and to really ensure as well that a bunch of venture capital and people weren't going to just jump in and be like, oh, great. How do we like throw a bunch of money at this thing and then like, create a moat, create a business and like dominate and just be it, the zero sum game. Right. And that's why we were filmed, right? It was as a result of that work at that time. And yeah, I was in that show for maybe like 2.2 seconds or whatever. I think people are searching for something, as a result of a feeling of unhappiness, and I think psychedelics are like the new thing, right? As they kind of should be, because they are very powerful. And my hope is that there are more people that are advocating for knowledge and education around a way to interact with these substances and do these things that pay tribute to Indigenous people that have been holding these things, and also do it in a way that's helpful for them. Because I think we've been sort of trained, dude, to be like, I'm going to do this for 30 days, then I'm going to become expert. It's like,
yeah, I see it in so many things where like, hey, come take a weekend workshop and you'll be an expert kettlebell or expert XYZ.
It's unfortunate people play into that.
Yeah.
But anybody that like, that lifts weights or does dance or does anything, realize nothing is fast. Everything takes time and hard work, Yeah,
dance taught me that the length to which something takes and how much love you actually have for something. Because you could train for 10 years and still be average, and you have to be okay with that.
Yeah, dude. Hopefully because again, I think what are you measuring? You're not necessarily measuring how good you are. You're measuring the enjoyment it gives you, And I think that's a super important part of thinking through finding those things, And if you can find those things, dude, that's amazing. That kind of takes it back to the kids. Like, we just want to put enough stuff in front of our kids where they have that. You know, they can go to a thing, whether that be outside or music or Mother Nature or whatever, and they can get that level of joy. Because that's, if people were more, that's fundamentally what it is, right? Like, that's in essence why people are unhappy, because they're missing that joy. They don't have that in their lives, you know, because they've supplanted that with something that they can show to somebody else potentially, versus like a true connection to a thing, whether that be the outside world or music or art or other people, just even other people, man, you know? So, yeah.
So I have to ask, how can people best support you and this type of movement?
That's a great question.
Because, you know, I think if people were given the right amount of or the right access to information, I think a lot of people do want to do good, but sometimes they're misguided or misled by other people who are, you know, kind of trying to prey on them. And but, you know, they generally do want to do something that's tangible, is actionable, you know?
Yeah. I think it's an interesting question because, you know, I don't have the answers, right? And I think that there's this like, there's a delineation between things that are internally useful and things that you want to do and creative, right? Which was, again, like when I was throwing events, like I did that for myself. It's awesome that people came. I did that for myself, you know? Currently, like the work is, it's educational, but it's still like, I'm still in a very experimental phase, you know, where it's very much putting things together that I think are really interesting for me. Hopefully some other people think it's interesting, but I'm not really motivated by that yet, you know? So, I think there's just some time, and I think, and honestly, I'm okay with that, you know? I think that, especially being an entrepreneur that's like, you know, had startups, like sometimes you can get really like, I'm going to put this deck together. I'm going to reach out to some funders. I'm going to spin up this thing. I'm going to take advantage of an opportunity. It's like, yeah, let's get in there. I know something about psychedelics. It's kind of big. Let's fucking go, dude. You know? And dude, like I think that kind of thinking can be very problematic, especially when you're dealing with something where you just need to take some time, you know? A lot of like time to figure out yourself, figure out how you actually are of value and you're not just like a vulture, you know? I think that's a process. And at the place that I'm at, I think I'm currently just trying to start small, but have a lot of like integrity, and just meet great people that are doing good work, you know?
So what I'm also hearing from you is if someone wants to help, then maybe take some time to reflect on their intentions and whether they're ready to like come in with a learning mindset and an offering mindset versus just like a opportunistic short-term approach.
Exactly. Whether that be a short-term opportunistic approach to make a bit, because this is definitely happening in psychedelics, right? Like they're like people that are great, like good meaning people, but they're like making mushroom drinks and like creating these little brands of buy my mushroom drink and trip out, you know, mushrooms are going to be big. Let me make a fucking drink, you know? And these guys aren't like, you know, these people aren't necessarily evil people, but yeah, they're totally just being opportunistic and they don't understand all the stuff that's happened before and what their obligation should be to ensuring that this isn't some fucking gold rush, right? And then the other side of that is even individuals, right? Who are like, oh, I heard about this. Like, what can I do for me to make myself better now, you know? And I think there's two sides of that. Yeah. You know, and I think what you said is exactly right. Like, if you're going to do this stuff, ideally you're coming into it with an open mind that is one of a student, you know, and where you're there to learn and you're there to be supportive versus being extractive, right? And I think that's super important.
Yeah, because I recognize there's a long chain or a long ecosystem that's in all this, right? There's the venture capitalist side, the big pharma side. There's legislation. There's also the individuals who are just like, okay, I'm going to make a business out of it. And then there's also probably maybe the biggest elephant in the room is like all the indigenous group that is possibly being left out of the conversation. So it's like a very complex topic that needs lots of education and definitely sensitivity.
Absolutely. I think it's, even just doing these kinds of things, man, and again, I think personally, it's about doing things like properly, from my vantage point versus like feeling this need to go and rush, for whatever reason that is,
Yeah. Any shout outs you'd like to mention it?
Shout outs. Shout out to Odie. I need to pay that guy to do my PR. Definite shout out to him. Shout out to my wife, Paneeth, who, I've been with her for 24 years now, committed partnership. Very lucky to have that in my life, and all my kids, man, like all the fam and all the people that are, doing things not for a short-term gain, but because they're really about a culture, they're really about, supporting something that deserves to be supported.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a real pleasure. I definitely hope to have you come back in the future because I honestly get the feeling that I could sit here and just talk to you like all day long, and then it will be just as interesting the 9th hour as the first hour.
Right
so,
on,
thank you so much for taking the time out to come on the show. Really appreciate it. You're always welcome back.
My pleasure, man. Thanks for inviting me. It was a lot of fun. Much love.